Deep beneath the waves of Lake Oblangada, Raz comes face to face with true terror. The monster that has been terrorizing Whispering Rock's psychic summer camp. The monster that attacked him in what he thought was his own mind. And the monster that has now taken Lily, the girl he was about to kiss. Raz comes face to face with Linda. After Lily was taken, Raz traveled to the depths of the lake using the camp's bathysphere, the thing from the start of the very first BioShock game, uncaring about his family's curse to die in water. It says a lot about young love, or maybe just about Raz as a person, that he is willing to travel so close to potential death just to save a girl he pretty much only just met. Beneath the waves, Raz comes across an air pocket at the town of Shaky Claim, which is buried deep beneath the water after the crater was filled in by the government. There isn't a lot that can be said about Shaky Claim, but we do know one thing for certain. They definitely had a nail factory. Seeing as we're about to use nails to fight off the terrifying lungfish Linda, but also there's actually just a building that says Nail Factory on it. So we do know for sure they made nails there. But now that the lake has swallowed the town, the only inhabitant is the monstrous lungfish Linda, who wasn't always monstrous, but a simple lungfish who lived in the lake. But for Raz, she is simply the terrifying beast that stole his love. So of course, we have a boss battle to get to. Welcome back to my series going over the worlds of Psychonauts, exploring them for deeper meaning and maybe a deeper understanding of humanity as a whole. Or something pretentious like that. If this is your first time here, first off, hello, welcome. Feel free to go back and watch the other episodes that I've made so far, or just keep watching forwards as we talk about Linda the Lungfish and her mind, Lungfishopolis. Also, this is your once per video reminder that there will be spoilers ahead, so if you don't want to be spoiled, then go play the game and come back, you doofus. Okay, now let's get back to the action. When Raz first reaches the air bubble at the bottom of the lake, there are a few things to note about the space that I think are really great design choices. Scattered around the ground, you'll find several things which become important momentarily. First off, boxes of nails. There are a few boxes of nails sitting around the area. The game basically shows you how you'll be fighting the boss, even before the boss fight begins. If you hit the nail boxes, you'll see nails fly out and litter the ground, and they sit there for a bit longer than an item that might despawn right away after being broken. Next, there are a whole bunch of oysters. They snap closed when hit or when Raz gets a little too close to them. The oysters will come into play later in the fight's third phase. Once again, the game prepares you for exactly what is to come early without making it explicit and telling you. It's just really good environmental storytelling. Or tutorialing. Linda the Lungfish is, I think, one of the longest fights in the game. In terms of boss design, it's really reminiscent of many boss battles that came before it. I keep harkening back to Mario titles, primarily because Psychonauts and Mario are both platformers, but the first phase of the fight falls into that all too familiar, wait for your opening and then jump on their head type of fight. Except in this case, instead of jumping on Linda's head, you are hitting boxes of nails, which she sucks in, causing what I assume is an ungodly amount of pain. The fight also falls into the rule of threes, and this is actually a trend in several boss fights throughout the game. You pop 3 nail boxes, and that will cause Linda to move to the next phase of the fight. What I love about this boss fight, especially though, is that it's more than just a fight. Part of the boss is actually half platforming, or actually probably mostly platforming, just based on the time it takes to go from area to area for the fight. While the area transitions can feel just a little bit long, they present a great opportunity for admiring the details of the world. There are a few great details I really love about the underwater zone. So, as you transition between zones, Linda basically moves this air bubble around and you have to stay inside it and platform as quickly as possible. So, you probably wouldn't even think about this, but you could actually use your dowsing rod underwater to find huge arrowhead deposits. I actually learned that by watching speedruns for Psychonauts growing up. They use this opportunity as a great way to collect arrowheads while still progressing the game so it doesn't slow them down, and it allows them to get the cobweb duster earlier on. If anyone's looking for a really fascinating look at the game's behind the scenes, there was this video on the Double Fine YouTube channel from like a decade ago where they watch a speedrunner beat the game and talk about the different parts. It's super fascinating and informative. The speedrun is very out of date now, but it is still entertaining nonetheless. Besides dousing, I think my favorite detail is the fact that when you approach the edge of the air bubble, those spooky green hands that grab Raz when he enters the water kind of just loom out of the dark waters. It's insanely creepy, like fate is just waiting for him to mess up and go in the water to get snatched. And that's exactly what happens. If you touch the edge of the bubble during this section, Raz does get grabbed, and you have to do over whatever section you're on. There are checkpoints fairly often though, so it isn't actually that bad. As I mentioned, the boss fight has 3 phases. The first 2 are basically identical. Linda will suck in air and you just have to break the nail boxes so she sucks them in. The final phase though is different, and I remember it really confusing me as a kid. So those oysters that snap shut that I mentioned earlier, now those come into play. Linda moves into melee range, where you then have to lure her into one of the several oysters in the area. If you bait her to attack you, she will swing and get her little dangly head thing stuck in the oyster, so then you can beat her up. The hitboxes on the oysters can be a little bit janky, but once you get it down, it isn't actually that bad. Finally, after finishing Linda off, we can actually enter her brain to try and fix her up. You know, the brain that this whole episode's actually about. However, before we can do that, Crawler comes out of Raz's ear and basically just tells us that Linda was once an ordinary lungfish, but she was experimented on by Oleander. We learn more about that a bit once we're actually inside the brain. It honestly did feel like a moment that was a little too exposition-y, because, like I said, we can literally learn all that same info inside of Linda's mind. But I also understand the need for the game to let us know that we can enter non-human brains with our Psychonaut powers, so I'll let it slide. So now, without further ado, we are headed to Lungfishopolis. I would be lying if I didn't say that Lungfishopolis is the funniest world in the game. I won't say it's my favorite level, but my god, no other level makes me laugh as hard as this one.
The government archives might have some information about your young girlfriend, Goggalor.
Well, I don't know if she's really my girlfriend. I mean, I think she...
I only meant that she is your friend who was a girl, Goggalor.
The whole premise of the world is inspired by Godzilla movies, where we, as Raz, basically play the role of Godzilla, destroying the city of Lungfishopolis. The whole world is a mix of many different ideas, including a jailbreak subplot, a superhero boss fight, and of course, freedom!
Freedom! Freedom!
Freedom! Most importantly for the world of Psychonauts as a whole though, Lungfishopolis serves as a look at how powerful Psychonauts can actually be. Linda's mind is constantly being flooded by propaganda thanks to the one and only Coach Oleander, who inside of Lungfishopolis is known as Kochamara. I also forgot to mention the people of Lungfishopolis call Raz Goggalor. It really ties into the old Japanese monster movie style. Coach Oleander has set up a radio tower inside Linda's mind that is constantly beaming out propaganda like kidnapping kids is good, and go take the children but don't damage their brains, and who can forget brushing your teeth is important. Not to get too political here, but a very real-world analogy for this is people whose only source of news is Fox News. When the only information you're getting comes from a warped and frankly evil perspective, of course it'll give you a warped and evil perspective on the world. Coach Oleander has basically installed Fox News into Linda's head, and so that all she hears and thinks about is kidnapping kids. Thankfully though, there is a group of freedom fighters in Linda's brain who team up with Raz to stop the brainwashing. The basic premise of the entire level is that Raz teams up with the freedom fighters to win back the populace and to free them from the brainwashing of Kochamara, who has basically enslaved the mind, which we could see in the first of the 2 memory vaults in Lungfishopolis. Very fittingly, the vault is found near the Lungfishopolis prison, where we have to free a freedom fighter pilot. The memory vault, titled Lungfishopolis Under Siege, shows the story of how Lungfishopolis was created and then subjugated. It starts with a colony of lungfish living underwater. until Kochamara arrives and forces the construction of the city that we now see, and eventually, like in a dictatorship, the Lungfish fall in line with Kochamara's ideals. But in the final frame, we do see the origins of resistance, the freedom fighters that Raz will be working with. The Psychonauts' ability to subjugate minds is actually a pretty terrifying prospect, and as we learn inside Linda's mind, it isn't just mental torture. Linda herself was actually tortured physically at the hands of Coach Oleander and Dr. Lobato. I think that Lungfishopolis is one of the most multifaceted levels in all of Psychonauts. As I already mentioned, it's heavily inspired by the Godzilla movies, as well as Japanese cities like Tokyo, complete with the figments resembling neon signs. But the level gets much deeper than that. Much deeper underwater, that is. Sorry. Let's call this the Lungfishopolis iceberg video. So, at the surface, we have that base layer of inspiration, but as we go deeper down the iceberg, we also get influences of dictatorships and authoritarianism. From the way Kochamara subjugates the city and the way they eventually fall in line with its ideals, representing the way that Linda herself is now doing the bidding of Oleander and Lobato, kidnapping children for their brains. Even deeper than that, though, we have another layer about the aspects of animal cruelty and specifically scientific testing on animals. Lungfishopolis' second memory vault, which is definitely a little hard to find, hidden among these buildings that can be destroyed to find its location, shows the outside story of what happened to Linda. I find it very cool that we can see the story of both the inside and outside of Linda in this world, two sides of the same coin, and the way that while Kochamara was on the inside, there were experiments being done on a poor, innocent lungfish. The vault, titled Lungfish and Lobato, shows us Linda before the brainwashing, an innocent lungfish living on the bottom of Lake Oblangada, which is what Kroller pointed out to us before we had even entered the mind. We then see Lobato arrive to scoop Linda out of the water, strap testing devices on her head, transforming her into the hideous, hulking beast she is now. Then, we see Lobato and Oleander sending Linda out to start stealing brains. I really like how the physical brainwashing also makes an impact on the mental world here, with a physical structure, in this case a radio tower, appearing inside Lungfishopolis where the propaganda is then broadcast from. There's one deeper layer we can actually explore from looking at the world itself combined with the knowledge from the two memory vaults: the environmental impacts of industrialization. I already mentioned how the lungfish were once peaceful lake dwellers, forced to land by Kochamara. Then they're forced to build a whole city, which also includes putting a dam in the water, blocking up their original ecosystem. This completely changed the way that the lungfish were living up until this point. Kochamara basically uprooted the entire way of life inside Linda's mind, while Lobato did the dirty work on the outside. I'm not really sure how in-depth the original thoughts for some of the worlds in Psychonauts are, but I have to imagine that the multi-layered Lungfishopolis was pretty well thought out in advance. There are so many different layers to it, which I think makes it a great mind to just read into a little bit more. I think that Lungfishopolis also serves as an important landmark in the game itself. It isn't necessarily the halfway point in the game, but it is the metaphorical halfway point, where up until this point, every other mind we've visited has been guarded and curated by their owner. Now, we jump off the deep end into a world that is not meant to be traversed by a kid. From here on out, too, every mind we visit hasn't been prepared for visitors. It's just the unaltered truth of the mines. No hiding away dark secrets in corners or compartmentalizing, just the spiral of madness that exists in the mind. Overall, in terms of the gameplay, Lungfishopolis is very straightforward. There's not a lot of running back and forth, just a straight march from point to point with the end goal of destroying the radio tower. We do get ourselves another Psi ability in this world though, the Psi Shield, which allows us to protect ourselves as well as deflect certain projectiles. Whenever you get a power inside of a world, you know that power is going to play a key role. In this case, we need to block rockets and deflect electric lasers, courtesy of the volunteer-run Lungfish Navy. I know, it's as crazy as it sounds. There are also plenty of great little references throughout the world, like one section near the end requires you to climb buildings to destroy planes, just like the original King Kong, and then there's also the cinematic duel with Kochamara before we can destroy the radio tower. Once again, this fight works in threes, just like the Linda fight earlier. Coach Hamera, who is totally not Coach Oleander, uses different fighting techniques like Mighty Ram and my personal favorite, Deadly Triangle Beam. We have to make use of the shield for the entire fight, reflecting lasers 3 times to move on to the second phase, and then we have to shield to protect ourselves from Coach Hamera's unavoidable area attack. And then in the final phase, you just reflect some more beams. Finally, after that, we can destroy the radio tower, freeing Linda's mind, and Lungfishopolis all band together to celebrate our victory. And I could just end this section there, I could. But there's still some things that I want to talk about, just some other small details that I think are just really fascinating about Lungfishopolis. First off, when you arrive in the area, you're in this small area of the city, below the dam. Raz is actually able to walk in the water in that region. I'm wondering if it has to do with the depth of the water, the same way that Raz is able to walk in the creek near camp, but that also doesn't really make sense because even coming close to the water on the beach, he is afflicted by the curse. It's just an odd little detail. The movement in Lungfishopolis is also pretty noteworthy because it feels much weightier than everywhere else in the game. Primarily because Raz is a giant and the extra weight makes Raz feel so much bigger. Most of the buildings across Lungfishopolis are destructible, with Raz able to jump on them or hit them. It makes the world feel a bit more sandboxy than the other mines in the game, but it all plays back into that original inspiration of turning Raz into a kaiju. Along those same lines, in the area above the dam where the water actually does affect Raz, instead of 3 bounces before the hand pulls him under, Raz only gets 2. Raz is also unable to use levitation in the level because he's too heavy for the levitation orb. It's those small details which really help bring the world to life and make it feel more realistic, which is weird because we're literally inside the head of a massive lungfish named Linda, but I digress. Lungfishopolis isn't the largest world, but as I said, it marks a really important point in the game and signals a change for everything else that comes after. It's also a level that lets you as the player delve as deeply as you want to. After finishing the level, Raz speaks with Linda, who offers to give him a ride to Thorny Towers, so he can continue on his quest to save Lily, and all the other debrained campers too. We also unlock a new form of fast travel. Linda, using a spooky-looking fishbone horn, can be summoned to either the beach at camp or the beach at Thorny Towers, and she will ferry you across to either side as needed. If you return to Lungfishopolis later, to collect figments or whatever, which I think I missed literally 1 in my playthrough, the city is exactly the same, unlike other worlds which become more peaceful or fixed when you return. The game does actually give an in-game reason though, that some people in the military are still brainwashed by Coach Hamera, leading them to continue attacking Raz. But apparently, the city is actually scheduled to be reforested at some point, so hopefully nature returns to normal, although Linda herself will never be the same. As for the lake bed at the town of Shaky Claim, thankfully, there are no exclusive collectibles down there because you cannot return to the bottom of the lake after the Linda boss fight. I really love Lungfishopolis, and Linda for that matter. I think she's a great character with an absolutely hilarious mind and also one of the deepest, most multi-layered minds in the game. Linda also represents the only time you enter a non-human mind in the Psychonauts series, so it presents a unique opportunity, unlike basically anything else we'll see, but it's definitely not the craziest thing that we'll see. That honor probably goes to the subject of the next mind we visit, Boyd. For now though, let's wrap this thing up. In total, Lungfishopolis has 113 figments, 5 mental cobwebs, 2 memory vaults, and 5 pieces of mental baggage. I really like Lungfishopolis as a world. That being said, I don't think it's the best world in the game. Outside its humor and depth for analysis, the platforming can feel a little bit janky, especially when it comes to climbing some of the skyscrapers. And the combat can just feel a little bit samey, especially when it comes to the repeated use of the shield ability throughout the level. So, I have kind of a hard time deciding where to put this level. I'm tempted to say B, but frankly the level might be closer to a high C, so I'm not sure. The humor is the biggest thing for me. Those laugh out loud moments really make the level shine, but it definitely feels a little held back by the straightforwardness and a bit of the clunkiness. I think I'm going to give it a B, but I may change my mind later on and switch it again. I'll let you know if I do. I also noticed that I keep giving levels Bs. I promise that will be higher, but we got to get to some future levels first. Next time, we're going to climb ashore at Thorny Towers and enter the mind of Boyd Cooper, one of the most infamous levels in Psychonauts, the Milkman Conspiracy. And trust me, there is going to be a lot to say about that one. Thank you so much for watching this episode of my Psychonauts Deep Dives. If you liked this episode and you haven't seen the previous ones, please go back and watch those. And if you want to find me elsewhere online, you can find me over on Twitch, where I stream pretty often, or on my website where I write about stuff. Just whatever stuff. It's my website. I do what I want to do. But until next time, where we get into the Milkman Conspiracy, that is all. So, peace out, y'all.